So in this video, I'm going to show you my Toyota Land Cruiser 2004 that I've basically converted to what I call a micro camper. Basically has a solar panel, solar powered dual battery system to run a little refrigerator, and can sleep in it, one person sleep in it, and have all the equipment for cooking and driving to like a trailhead and leaving the car there for a couple of days at a time, backpacking and all that without worrying about the ice melting in the cooler. So I'm gonna walk around and show the stuff I have here, including the fridge, the solar panel, the wiring in the under the hood, and my sleeping arrangement and all that. So this is a Costway 30, I think it's like 32 quart refrigerator. I wrapped it in original some styrofoam and some reflexive to keep it insulated, more insulated, because the wall used to get cold. It's basically a decent size for me. I can store like 4 or 5 days worth of food in there because you don't need to put ice in it now. And then the wire for it, the electric wire for it, goes under the floor mat, goes to the front, gets plugged to one of the cigarette lighters. And this is my sleeping arrangement. This one becomes like a bed that you can sleep and then sit on. That's my water jug. I can put my clothes in the netting there. And I have all my kitchen stuff in here. This thing pulls out all the way, and I have kitchen stuff in this box, and for coffee and tea and other food stuff I can put here. I installed it. It's a 100-watt panel. I just attached it to the existing roof rack, the stock roof rack that came in, using these, they call them flat bar, punched hole flat bar steel straps. I attach them to these 2 crossbars that go across the roof of the car. And then the wire for it, I brought the 2 wires from the solar panel. I routed them through the rain gutter here. Through the hood. There's a crack here that I could pass it into the engine compartment, making sure that when I open the hood, it doesn't touch the wires. Then I have a second battery installed in the engine compartment. I love this car. It has a huge engine compartment. There was enough room for a second battery to be put in here. So the wires come from the solar panel here, and I put the charge controller, screwed it into the frame of the car. I didn't want to put it inside the car because inside the car it gets really hot. It's like 140 degrees when you leave the windows up in the sun. Here apparently it's going to be cooler because away from the engine itself. And then the wires for the battery, the second battery from the charge controller, they go back to the second battery here, to the positive and negative terminal. The negative terminal of the battery is also attached to the body of the car. And then in addition to the positive wire coming from the charge controller, I have the positive wire from the second battery going to a marine switch here. I wanted to go mechanical, so just put a manual switch. It has positions 1 and 2 and 2 and off. So that's the starter battery, the main battery, and the positive wire from the main battery goes to terminal 1 of the switch, and the positive wire from the second battery comes and goes to terminal 2 of the switch, and then the output of the switch goes to the harness that was originally attached to this battery. So I disconnected the harness and connected it to the output of the switch. So when I'm driving, I use usually on 1. The car just charges the battery and the fridge runs from the battery power, and as I'm driving. Then when I get to a campground, I put this switch on 2. That way all the accessories of the car are connected to battery number 2, the deep cycle battery. That's a deep cycle battery that I bought from Costco. It's 24 DC size. It's like 60 amp hours. And based on my calculations, it was sufficient to run that Costwave fridge, which usually runs at 45 watts when the compressor is running. So like about 4 amps per hour. But the compressor doesn't run all the time. I tested it only runs quarter of the time. And when the temperature of the fridge reaches like 27, 28 degrees that I had set, the compressor, shuts down and the fridge goes on idle. Then another 12 minutes or so after that, it gets warm enough for the compressor to get kicked in again for a couple more minutes, and then it shuts down again. So on average, about 10 minutes to 15 minutes, the fridge runs out of an hour. So on average, the fridge uses about 1 amp per hour over a 24-hour period. So the 100-watt solar panel tested. I went on a road trip for like 4 days, was sufficient to keep the second battery charging while the fridge was running, during the day when driving with the main battery, and then at night was running from the second battery. That's about it. And then I think one more thing that I modified in the car was the fridge is plugged into one of these. I have 4 cigarette lighters, plugs in this car, like 12 volts. 1 here, there, and then 2 in the back. And as you know, and they're all like attached to they're all switched. Basically, you have to have the ignition key in the accessory, in the ignition, and have the turn to accessories. But I wanted to make sure that when I go like a backpacking trip or something, I can leave the car, take the car keys away with me, and not making sure the fridge still runs. So what I did was, one of these cigarette lighter units, I took the paneling off and cut off the wires from it, and then wired it to the fuse box, which is under there, and jumped it to a fuse that's not switched, that's always providing power to I think it was the dome light switch or whatever fuse. So this cigarette lighter is always can be on. The key doesn't have to be in the ignition. So that's another modification I did. Other than that, it's a fairly comfortable setup. You can sleep in the back. The fridge runs. It's fairly quiet. Doesn't make too much noise. And for bathroom, I usually I have a big shovel. There's so many trees there. And if you have to go number 2, I have a shovel. I can dig a hole. And I usually go to developed campgrounds anyway, so I don't have a problem with that. And for cooking, I have a 2-burner camp stove with little propane tank that's stored actually in the back of the car too. Or I have a jet boil that I use for making coffee and tea. So it's fairly self-sufficient, and and it's a good car to drive on the highway, 80-90 miles per hour, no problem. And for off-roading to go off trail and off-road, off pavement. And I've done like, just without lifting the car or anything, just standard Land Cruiser. I went on some of Utah's backcountry roads that was rated moderate, fairly, you needed high clearance, but there was no issues with this Land Cruiser. That ends my video here. If you have questions, you can send me and I'll send you answers.